I will talk over the as long as we always say, technology is good as long as it works. Slideshow. There we go. Okay, just let me close. Okay, so today we're going to, as Michelle has already introduced, we're going to talk about the development of the child, birth to 3 years. We're going to look at it from a connected point of view. Connection is so important throughout childhood, right up to adulthood and beyond. However, connection in the first 3 years is hugely beneficial. So a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about today, when around about development, will be the physical, the emotional, the social, the sensory, and the cognitive development of children, but in a very much a connected way, and very much based around attachment and play, and the importance of an invested adult in the early years. So, first of all, connected play. To me, connected play is the only way to play. When we are connected with our children, great things happen. If we focus on play, development will just happen naturally. They go hand in hand. It's really important for us as home visitors to look at stage and not age, regardless of the child's age. Every child follows their own unique developmental pathway. So when we look at stage, the stage of the child, it's much easier to be able to cement their learning and encourage their learning when we focus on stage rather than age. Yes, age milestones are important and they help us know that we're on track. However, when we're trying to bridge gaps, and encourage development in particular areas that maybe children are finding challenging, we need to look at the stage that they're at and build upon the abilities that are already there. So abilities and strengths should always be our starting point. We should always meet a child where they're at and build upon the ability and strength that they already have. We need to use our observation skills as home visitors to understand how children are playing and why they're playing. This is really valuable to parents because we can provide them with really useful information as to the type of play that children are engaging in, why they're doing it. Do we need to intervene? Do we need to step back? Is there anything that we can do to help? Or indeed, do we need to just step back and not help at all? It's understanding the play and the types of play and how your child is presenting is all to do with connection. So connection is the key to learning, development, and growth. Movement is fundamental for brain and body fluency and is an extremely vital part of play. And I will talk about movement and fluency and the importance of movement throughout the first 3 years as we go through the rest of the training. So how, not when? Valuable play activities incorporate the whole body and the whole brain. So when we incorporate the two things together, that's when children become much more automatic in their learning and their abilities, and play and development and learning becomes fun to them. Once something becomes fun, we know it's so much easier to be able to learn and internalize and have become part of our fluent kind of armor that it's like a go-to. It's easy for us. So we've got to, play has got to be fun to make development fluent. So knowing that play has strong foundations in growth and development for all children right from birth, it's knowledge that all practitioners need to be both aware of and then to highlight to parents and caregivers. We have got to know that play is the answer to so much in the birth to 3 age, and indeed as children grow. So play should begin at birth. We don't, play looks different from birth, but we don't have to wait for a child to grow to be able to play. So Early play experiences such as tummy time, that is a huge part of play for the young child. So when we look at tummy time for the really young baby, we're looking at developing the whole body as well as the brain to maximize a young child's potential. That's what we're always looking to do. We want optimal learning. We want a child to be able to reach their potential. So when we encourage parents and babies to do tummy time, we're encouraging an awareness of both sides of the body, where we strengthen the baby's back, their neck, their core, and we build muscle strength. It's not just about the physical aspects of tummy time, though. There's an awful lot more that goes on in tummy time that is just not about strengthening muscles and core strength. Tummy time strengthens connections between the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which is hugely important for attention, balance, and coordination. Our ABCs that we need to grow and develop all have their roots in tummy time. Tummy time also supports our primary and secondary reflexes. All babies are born with primary reflexes that were available to them in the womb to ensure successful pregnancy and successful birth. But as they grow and develop after birth, it is really important that they start to get rid of those primary reflexes and start to develop their secondary reflexes, such as being able to roll over, hold their head up, sit up and crawl. All of those things are our secondary reflexes that we need to be able to develop. So as when our child is born, tummy time is probably one of the most fundamental things that we can do to try and get rid of those primary reflexes that will prevent our secondary reflexes coming into play. So when you hold on to your reflexes too long, a young baby then may have difficulties with the sitting up, the rolling over, and the crawling. So tummy time, the roots of tummy time are so important for encouraging fluent development of your child. It is never too early and it's never too late to start tummy time. Tummy time should begin from birth. Safe tummy time can be, simply on your chest, and you're lying down. You can have it. You can give more impact, I suppose, when you're lying down with a young baby. We're not going to put very young babies down on hard floors. We're always going to ensure that the environment is conducive to safety and development. And I will go into a suitable home learning environment as I go on. So it's really important to use resources to assist tummy time. However, using resources such as, your beautiful mats and your colors and your mirrors and your noises and your beautiful rattles that you're trying to encourage your baby to stay down and become engaged with. Not one thing is more important than the power of your interaction and connection during tummy time. I have seen over 25 years, and I'll never be convinced otherwise, that tummy time plays such a fundamental role in growth and development of the infant. Okay. I'm wondering why this is not moving on. There we go. Okay, so the freedom of movement. So movement is our first language. Restriction of movement may restrict language and other aspects of development. So that in itself highlights how important movement is in the first 3 years. Indeed, it's hugely important as a child grows, but in the first 3 years, any restriction of movement may have quite a significant impact on the areas of development, particularly language and learning. So safe floor areas are, they should be seen as optimal learning zones, and they should be a priority. So, as home visitors, safe floor areas to play and to have your own tummy time, being able to roll, sit up, and all of that's really important. And it's something that needs to be revisited and highlighted as an optimal learning zone for children. So, often parents aren't aware of how vitally important the floor is. Today, unfortunately, we see lots of container baby traits in young children where, unfortunately, it's a busy lifestyle now and there's loads of fabulous, gorgeous, all singing, all dancing apparatuses out there. So, often young babies, there is an overuse. There is no longer balanced use of apparatus. It's often overuse. So we're moving from one container to the other. We're moving from walkers to car seats to bouncers to bamboo seats to high chairs, and a lot of them are obviously vital. We need a car seat, we need a high chair. But other things that we really don't need to be using if we can use the floor. So when we see babies with container baby traits, it is children that their movement has been restricted and they are struggling to roll over. They're struggling to sit up. They're struggling with their balance. They have difficulty crawling, and all of that stops fluent learning. And when we stop fluent learning from brain to body, it makes things just so much more difficult for a child. It doesn't mean that they can't relearn it. Of course they absolutely can. But what we're trying to do is free up their path to learning and development. Midline presentation is something that is really important that we try to do automatically to young babies under the age of 5 and years old. In my opinion, we still should be handing everything to babies in the middle. Handing to the right or handing to the left is not letting the baby decide as to what hand that they would like to reach for the object. So it's really important that we establish roots of dominance in the very, very early months and years, where we hand everything into the midline. When we have a very, very young baby, in and around 4, 5, or 6 months, when we're handing them something, it's really useful to hand something up above their eye line, where they have to move their head and look up. When you can engage them, maybe by shaking it, if it's a rattle or something noisy, they will look up, they will engage with the toy. If you pull the toy slowly down past their face and ensure that their eyes are engaged with the item, and move down. And once you just move down around about their belly button area, both of their little hands will come in to reach for the item. And that tells you that the brain sent the signals equally to both sides of the body to reach for the item, rather than us deciding for them which side that they need to be reaching for toys or items. That is a sign of fluent presentation in a young infant, and it's something that we need to practice over and over again to give them the chance to be able to connect both hemispheres of the brain together. Head writing and wobbling, balance, and core and trunk stability are also really vital, and they're more or less evident in the sitting up stage. So from 6 months, you will note on any developmental checks from PHN, LifeStart, we have our own, sitting up is a requirement in and around 6 to 8 months. Often children are not able to manage that milestone at 6 months, and that's absolutely fine. Every child follows their own unique developmental pathway. So, that doesn't set off alarms at all. All we want is to ensure that children have, I suppose, more experience in head writing and wobbling. We've got to be able to wobble to learn how to balance. We can't learn how to balance if we don't learn how to wobble. And head writing is very simply on your bum, sitting up, old-fashioned way, put your cushions around you so that you are, learning to steady yourself, obviously with adult supervision. But if we're always being held in an apparatus such as a bamboo seat or a high chair or a bouncer or a jumperoo or, God forbid, a walker, we don't have that. We don't have that opportunity to be able to head write and to encourage our body to understand core and trunk stability and to practice our balance. We know as adults, you're not going to get good at anything unless you can practice. So we have to, offer them time to practice. Just reiterating what I said there regarding walkers. Walkers are, they're banned in a lot of countries. We still have them here, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll be gone soon. They restrict development. They are unsafe. But when it comes to development, a baby develops from the head down and from the center out. When we put a baby into an apparatus or into a position that the brain and the body are not communicating and working well together, then we're hindering the natural progression of development. So we need to ensure that babies are free all the time, freedom of movement, get them out of the apparatuses, so we're not interrupting the normal flow of development, that we're allowing the left and right hemispheres of the brain to work together, to work to their full potential and not restrict that movement. So crawling itself presents a very fluid and a very fluent connection. I love to see a young baby crawling, as I'm sure we all do. That beautiful cross pattern, crisscross crawling stimulates the brain to develop in a balanced way, and it facilitates both hemispheres in the brain to communicate freely. And that is what we want. When we connect left to right and right to left, where we connect the brain to body and the body to brain, that all creates fluency. And once we have fluency, we have very easy and enjoyable learning. So creating connections that provide fluency to learn and develop. When a child has fluency, learning becomes easier. And that is what we want. We all, it's even for adults, when we have something to do or something to learn, somebody please make it easier so that we can learn it and retain it, remember it, and move on from it and be able to use it as a platform for the next thing that is asked for from us. So floor time is key for many of these milestones, and I really can't highlight how important floor time is, and it's something that we really do need to share with our parents and highlight the benefits. The floor is your baby's first playground. Give it priority over apparatuses all the time, because all the magic happens on the floor. Development will happen on the floor if we facilitate it and allow it. So to be able to do that, we need to have a constructive and positive home learning environment. So the home learning environment plays a vital part in how a child learns and develops. A positive home learning environment paves the way for a child's love of learning and their positive attitudes towards knowledge and development. That sounds ever so easy, but sometimes, providing that really positive home learning environment can be difficult for parents. And this is where our support, comes in. If we know what to look for, if we know what to offer, if we know what to advise for a really productive home learning environment for a child and for a parent, it's really, really vital. You can't really underestimate how much you're helping when it comes to child development and parent development itself. So the home is your child's first school, it's their first playground, it's their first storybook, and it's their first imaginative adventure. All the magic begins at home. So of course it makes sense that we have a rich and enabling home learning environment. That's not all about toys. Of course we love toys. There's some beautiful toys out there. Most children nowadays have toys, other children do not, but it's not always about toys. It's about offering opportunities for children to play and interact, preferably with beautiful books. We know how fabulous books are, and I'll go into that later. Objects, everyday interactions and everyday objects. There's wonderful objects within the home that will provide loads of learning. When we interact, though, we can't, when I was talking about tummy time earlier, we can't underestimate the importance of our interaction. Our interaction is the most important thing in the home learning environment. If we've got quality interactions and quality connections with our children in the home, beautiful things will happen. So, we need to get away from the promotion of all these beautiful, all singing, all dancing, fabulous apparatuses and toys, and strip it back to the most quality stuff, and always keeping in mind that we're positive role models. We provide the love, the security, the encouragement, the conversation, and the positivity to help that child thrive. So a good home learning environment encourages children and young people to have positive attitudes to learning, to be curious, motivated, and to have confidence in themselves. The Grow and Child program, which we ourselves at LifeStart deliver to our parents once a month, um, is a month by month stage development information covering physical, emotional, social, sensory, and cognitive development of the child. We talk so much within those issues regarding, not dampening a child's curiosity and motivation to learn. And the thing that always does dampen a child's curiosity and motivation to learn is when we are constantly saying no and stop. When we have an unsafe and low quality home learning environment, often mum spends a lot of time, stop and no, don't touch, the environment has got to be, it's got to be um suitable and motivational for the child. So having a look around and seeing, what can we do? What can we change in this area? What can we provide to make the home learning environment more optimal? So talking together, moving together, and playing together provides vital links to a child's sense of belonging and their well-being. So how to reset the home learning environment for parents? A lot of this probably will be done by most of us, if not all. So offering good quality time where you immerse yourself in your child's world, where you show interest in their wonderment and showing interest in their wonderment. They know when we're faking it for sure. Stay positively engaged with interactive expressions and body language and model genuine listening skills. Entering a child's world, especially their fantasy play, gives parents and caregivers vital insight into the minds of our children and how they feed their amazing and curious natures. We will only know how to feed our children's interests and their amazing curious natures by working out what it is that makes them tick. And we can see very early on, from young babies, what makes them tick, what gets them interested, and what floats their boat, so that we can actually, build upon that. So children obviously will much more quickly learn from what we do than what we say. So by offering quality interactions at home, we're enhancing their social and emotional skills alongside their learning. And the social and emotional skills are so vitally important for things that we struggle with as parents and as home visitors. And, challenging behavior and behavior is all so deeply connected with your social and emotional skills. And it's something that comes up time and time again. And I think the last time I was on with the Home Visiting Alliance, I did something along the lines of brief stuff along the lines of challenging behavior. And so the social and emotional skills we're teaching in the young years are so, they're so tightly connected to a child's behavior, their understanding of their behavior, and if they challenge using behavior as they get older. So providing a home learning environment rich in all these experiences optimizes your child's chance to be the best version of themselves. And what more do we want than for our children to become the best version of themselves? So encourage a home learning environment reset where it's necessary. In a lot of homes it isn't necessary. So ensure that it includes lots of quality time, shared meal times, lots of listening, talking, and play, and all of the important interactions that we all need to learn, to develop, to have fun, to smile, and to make home learning happy learning. Once it's fun, it's going to work. So moving on to playful visual development for the very young child. Surprisingly, 70 to 90% of learning comes from visual pathways in the early years. That is a huge amount. That's a massive percentage. So visual learning is vital. So if we look back on our home learning environment, we need to have a visually stimulating environment where our children's visual pathways are being engaged. So we need to offer detail and sharp contrast. When they're young, we need to go big and go bold. As you can see here from the illustration, we have the black and white. Black and white is hugely important for young children. Black and white on black in the very early months will encourage focusability and and vision. So vision is learned and it's not automatic. Before I did my training many years ago, I would have assumed that we were all born with the vision that we have, but no, vision is learned. So we have to be there to stimulate the vision by using lights, different shades, torches, moving targets. The great outdoors does vast things for encouraging vision. Black and white on black, and vivid patterns, large, bold print, mirrors, sensory toys. Face patterns are fabulous. Face patterns for the young babies are really, really important. You can do them in black and white, or you can do them in real pictures. When, it's probably one of the very first patterns that a child will understand when they see faces, because they're very used to looking at our face. And it's one of the earliest times where they start to understand that separate things come together to make one. So we have two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. They will be looking at those individually initially, and then as familiarity comes in and they understand that this is mum's face or dad's face, or their primary caregiver, that they start to pull those separate components of two eyes, nose, and a mouth together, and they know that they will all belong together. So that, that is like an early stage of knowing how to pull separate elements together to make one thing, such as spelling. We're pulling the letters together to make a word. Jigsaws, we're pulling the pieces together to make a picture. So all of this is so vitally important and hugely connectable to latter learning. So using visually stimulating toys and all of that in your environment to aid vision. So see what your child sees. Positioning is key. For the very young baby, positioning is key. Get down on the floor and have a look. Your environment might look beautiful from our point of view, but from a baby's point of view, maybe we're just seeing skirting boards and underneath the sofa. So, make sure that all of these beautiful patterns and black and white patterns and colors and toys are in your baby's eye line, particularly when they are on the floor and particularly when they are on their tummy. So practicing vision is something that's often forgotten, but it is vital for good sight, focus ability, and pattern perception down the line. So exercise the eyes to exercise the mind, and we have 4 ways. So we have up and down, across, and then our diagonal both ways. And the diagonal is something that we often forget. So in LifeStart Services, we use basic visual stimulation cards with loads of different patterns, whether it be black and white, white on black, with a little bit of red. We add in green and yellow as the child gets older, and blue and all the other colors. But encourage them to use diagonal vision as well, because it is something that we often forget to do. So the wonder of music. The voice can only produce what the ear can hear. And I think that is, that it is so vital. And you will see that where you have children that have hearing difficulties, and the effect that it has on their speech. So therefore, music has a positive impact on our speech and our language development. Music is the only activity that activates, stimulates, and uses the entire brain, which I find fascinating. Music is the only activity that will do that. So listening to music increases blood flow to the regions of the brain that generate and control our emotions. I often use a lot of music with children when we're having, behavior that challenges due to an overflow of emotion and anxiety. So, that part of the brain, it actually literally lights up when they hear music, which, all of the wonderment of music fascinates me, and it can be so important. So introducing it in the early months and in the early years, and having loads of variety, will be really beneficial to their speech and their hearing. However, classical music in particular, classical music has all the pitches and tones necessary for good speech and good pronunciation, and to be able to pick out the different sounds that they come across in words. So using classical music as relaxation is absolutely fine, but having classical music on in the background during playtime is equally as beneficial. Rhythm, movement, timing, and sequence aids all sorts of learning for a young child, and we get that through music. You know, to be able to read, to be able to carry a conversation, to understand the kind of rudiments of conversation, all of that. You know, we need rhythm, we need movement, we need timing and sequence. We need to know when to stop, we need to know when to come in, we need to know all of these things to be able to judge kind of reciprocal conversation. So music offers all of this. Music releases freedom in our learning pathways and creates fluency. And I'll probably say fluency about 100 times before I'm finished this morning. So, you know, fluency is key. If we have fluency, we've got fun. And if we have fun, we've got learning. So dancing to music enhances body and brain connections and stimulates balance, which in turn has a positive influence on a child's holistic progress. Balance is so important. Next week, I will be talking about the sensory system. And, you know, balance is a huge part of that, and the part it plays in the development of, you know, the older children. But I will also be referring back to the early years. So, you know, encouraging parents to dance with your children. It's a beautiful way to attach and connect with your child, but it also enhances so many body and brain connections that are going to be vital for their learning as they go forward. So playful memory development. These are just basic things that we use in the growing child, or we highlight in the growing child with our parents. So we talk about building up, you know, a visual picture in your mind. So it's simply really recalling things when they're out of sight. And it's something that a skill that we obviously need as we get older, and the roots of it begin in young infancy. So I'm sure you've all heard of object and people permanence, you know, where object permanence is, if you haven't established object permanence, when something goes out of sight, you no longer think it exists. So we would start early with people permanence with young children, where we play peekaboo, where they realize I'm here, I'm gone, I'm here, I'm gone. And then, you know, when we walk out of the room, we'll have a young baby cry. But as they establish people permanence and mum permanence or dad permanence, they realize that we're going to come back. Their security, you know, bond has enhanced, so they no longer cry. So you know that they're established in people permanence. So object permanence then is something that we need to physically do. So we're covering items for them to search for. You know, if they drop them, are they looking for them where they went? You know, get your child engaged. And to be able to teach object permanence, I always refer to teach to the reach. If a child is not reaching for an item that you're trying to maybe teach something, or you're trying to engage with your child, there's no point. There's no point in using that item. Use the item that the child is interested in and engaged with. Teach to their reach. If they're reaching out, you've got an opportunity to teach something about this item, whether it be object permanence, noise, color, sound. Once they're engaged with an item, you know, you can do lots. So if they're reaching for the beautiful remote control, cover it. So, you know, encourage them to seek it, pull off the cover so that they can find the remote control, so that they know, you know, there is object permanence as well as people permanence. Mouthing is also a vital component of memory development. If we do not allow our children to mouth objects, and that's simply just putting it into their mouth, if we don't allow that, you know, it's difficult for a child to kind of remember the properties of objects and what they look like. So, and what they feel like. So for us to really establish object permanence, we need to ensure that if the object is safe and it's child friendly, it's important that they get to mouth that, to understand, oh, that's round, it's pointy, it's hard, it's thick, it's small. All of that thing. Mouthing is just matching. And it's really important that that's part of the memory development process. Often children are not allowed to put anything into their mouth, you know, apart from their feeding equipment. And, you know, it's important that they're able to mouth and match other objects. So getting in shape, we're probably all thinking about that before the summer. So pegboard. So this is a different kind of shape. So pegboards. So pegboards are just simply wooden or plastic boards that have pieces that fit into them. So we want them to be color matched. So the same color as the peg needs to be on the board where it fits. Large handles, hugely important. There's so many pegboards that have little tiny handles, and they are not useful for the under threes. They need to have large handles where they can grab them. They need to be easy to fit. If a child is struggling with pegboards and matching and doing things like that, after their kind of mouthing stage and their object permanent stage, use hand over hand. You can guide, touch is really important to help a child remember something. So use your hand over theirs to be able to establish how you put it in and how you take it out. So backward chaining also. Backward chaining is simply doing as the involved and invested adult in your child that's working with your child, be it be you, your home visitor, or somebody at school or in creche. They do the most difficult parts of the chain first. So if there's 4 pieces to the pegboard, we build 3 and we leave out the easiest piece for the child. And then the child gets instant gratification for the least amount of effort. Once they have established and been able to put the circle in, then maybe we can do 2 pieces and leave out the circle and the square and encourage their abilities that way, rather than handing them an empty pegboard and starting with a huge ask for them to be able to solve that problem. If we work backward, it makes it so much easier for children. Setting children up to fail will only put them off a lot of these activities because they're not all singing, all dancing on screens. They're basic toys, but they're basic toys that are really important. So it's important that we encourage their success and do that as easily as possible. Adding sensory extras to any toy, particularly for children with additional needs, is really important. A sound, a noise, anything like that, making it bigger, making it easier, making it easier to hold. All of that is really important. I cover all of sensory extras and things in and how to adapt toys in the neurodiversity training. So if I start to go into that today, we'll be here a lot longer than 1 o'clock. So shape, size, and fit understanding, it enhances our spatial awareness, our motor skills, and our judgment skills, all necessary to be able to navigate safely through their environments. So if we can fit a square into a square hole, a circle into a circular hole, we will be able to understand much better how to navigate around our environment when we're up on our feet, because we understand spatial awareness. We understand where it is, we understand the height, the judgment, the movement. So simple games of shape, size, and fit are really important, with all different pieces of different shapes and sizes. Top loaders for children under 3. So any shape sorters that you're using, always top loading for the under 3s. Side loaders become second. There's a lots of beautiful shape sorters out there, but you'd need a degree to be able to work out what goes where. So simple first. Don't put them off. Try to encourage, and backward chain if necessary. So books, as I mentioned before, books are fabulous. They have endless benefits. They're a rich source of positive attachment, bonding, and attunement for both you and your child. The nicest, wonderful connections occur whilst reading with your child. So books are irreplaceable. There's nothing else that will ever replace the benefit of a book. So encouraging parents, really early on from birth, read to your baby, introduce books, show them books, let them have suitable books for their age, let them chew on bath books, let them look at books, let them really investigate books early, and then they will have a respect for books, and they will love books as they grow older. I think particularly in the last couple of years, books have made a big comeback for sure. I don't know whether that was down to COVID and more stories being told or what, but books have definitely made a big comeback. So it's never too late, and it's never too early to start reading books. they're full of simplicity and life lessons, for children that are older, even trying to teach, moral development of sharing, going to the dentist, going to the doctor, anything like that. Books are the way to go. Use books of all shapes and sizes. Use books for little hands. Give them small books so that they can try and manipulate them to turn. Use big books so that you can use them whilst they're sitting with you, where you can encourage them to turn their heads from left to right. When they have a bigger book, they need to turn from left to right. They need to physically move to look at the pages. That is something that needs to be taught. Babies will nearly automatically look at the page that's right in front of them rather than looking to the left. And we need to encourage the left to right and horizontal visual field, because that is how we learn in this country. So that's what we need. So left to right and horizontal visual field needs to be taught. So we need to encourage and draw our children's attention over to the left-hand side of the book and then over to the right. Look at you opening the book and turning the book around so that they are starting to become more fluent with their left to right and horizontal visual field. Unfortunately, in today's world, the biggest impact on left to right and horizontal visual field is screen time. It has the biggest negative impact on vision in the under fives, which we all know, and I think all parents are fully aware of it as well. It's just so difficult for parents in this day and age to avoid screens, to avoid phones, to avoid games, PlayStations, the lot. For the under threes, it's just not advised at all unless it's FaceTime, and even at that, limited time. Very difficult for parents to avoid when you look at all the cartoons and new guys that are on screen, and they're advertised as, for brain development. They don't encourage brain development in any way, unfortunately. We have a new generation of scrollers. We have now got kind of the top-down vertical field, because we have children that do a lot of scrolling, even in the very early, like as young as 9, 10, 11 months. We have scrollers. Everything is scrolling, top-down vertical field, which moves completely away from the left to right horizontal field. When we are constantly on screens, we weaken our cognitive muscles. There's no two ways about that. We do. I think we will know as adults, if we spend a huge amount of time on a screen, which I will not make you do today, we're not just tuned in as good. Our cognitive ability is definitely, impaired. So you can imagine, if you're a young child, the effect that it has on your cognitive muscles. The frontal lobe lies dormant when we are on screens. The frontal lobe needs normal human interaction to develop. So if we're on a screen and we don't have a human interaction, then the frontal lobe is switched off. So if you have a child that's on screens 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 hours a day, that may sound a lot, but trust me, it's happening. Their frontal lobe is dormant for all of that time. How can normal brain development be established if we're on screens for that length of time? Your concentration and attention is affected. 100% it's affected. However, we have found as home visitors that often, parents will say, no, attention is good because, he can spend an hour, 2 hours on the tablet, or, his concentration is great. He watches Thomas or whatever it is he's watching on the tablet, and he can do that for an hour. That is not the concentration and attention that we're looking for. That is an addiction to screens. The concentration and attention that we need is attention that, you're looking for when they grow older, when they are trying to establish relationships, when they're at school, when we are lending attention. That is one thing that screens affect greatly, is a child's ability to lend attention. Lending attention is where you are doing one thing and you're engrossed in it, and somebody speaks to you and you're able to look up, listen to what that person has said to you, take in the information, respond, and then go back to whatever it was you were doing. You can guarantee that a young child who is on a tablet and is called and asks something, or that they do not, first of all, they don't answer, and second of all, they don't take in the information. So lending attention is hugely affected. And of course, when we are at school, we need to be able to concentrate and lend attention from we go in the morning till we come home in the evening. So if we are having loads of time on tablets and screens, that's going to be hugely negatively affected. Screen learning for young children under 3, is largely non-transferable. We will have a lot of children who will do maybe color learning games on tablets, matching red to red and blue Thomas to blue Thomas and green to green. However, if we are then, trying to transfer that learning over to blocks, over to Play-Doh, that learning is not transferable over. So we need to continue to do the blocks and the Play-Doh and the colors and all of that outside of our tablet and screen time. Parents need to be encouraged to monitor and balance the use. What is the ratio of play to screen time? They need to be aware that screen time is not playtime. And if we can try to encourage that just gently. I know it is hugely difficult. I'm a parent myself, I know. So it's just giving maybe parents the information that's out there in a nice balanced way that we're not judging, and we understand that screens need to be given at whatever, if there's particular reasons. And that's okay, but it's the balanced use, and trying to reduce the hours as much as possible. Excessive screen time has a negative impact on speech. That is just the way it is. There is no may have a negative impact. It has a negative impact on speech development in the 0 to 3s. And just also as a side note, using screens as a regulator, a reinforcer, or as assisted technology for children who struggle should be used without guilt and in conjunction with your speech therapist. We as home visitors are not speech therapists. We are not autism therapists. We need to realize that assisted technology is a completely different world for children with additional needs. And if they have assisted communication technology, that they need to be able to use it all the time without guilt. So speaking out, how do we encourage young children to be able to speak out and have confidence in their speech? So firstly, we need to encourage parents to have fun with speech, but not perfection. Never, ever, ever correct a child's speech. Just model good speech. If they are attempting words, that's fabulous. Continue to model correct pronunciation, and it will encourage their speech. Play lots of point and say and conversational games. Remember to pause. Always pause. One of my downfalls for sure is I always feel I need to fill the gap, particularly when I'm playing with children. And I could talk about child development all day, and then when I try to get into my inner child and play, I find it difficult. So doing that point and say and the conversational games and the reciprocal kind of serve and return idea with children is wonderful, but do remember to pause. Always leave that gap so that your child has that opportunity to speak and to fill. Join your actions to words and use your action songs. Children learn greatly what a word means by the action that's followed after using the word. Use different intonation, pitch, and tone. We know as adults that it's easier to kind of take things in if people are using different intonations, pitches, and tones, and that connected with your body language and your expression. Children use all of those clues to understand what the word means. So intonation, pitch, and tone is really important. Blowing and sucking games such as bubbles, crazy straws, whistles, all of anything like that will enhance oral development. All we want to do is to build up, the muscles in the lips, the muscles in the tongue, the muscles in the mouth. Once we have like a strong mouth, a pronunciation and words will flow much faster. So oral muscular development is aided by using varied food textures as well and being able to chew well. So, encouraging encouraging and supporting parents through that phase of when they, thankfully, parents do a lot of baby-led weaning, and that really encourages young babies to be able to chew and build up their oral muscular development. However, if parents are not comfortable with that, which a lot of parents, including myself, were not comfortable with it, you know, when they're introducing the lumpy foods, that we are there to encourage, we're there to understand, give all the information possible, because there is a window of time after kind of 9-10 months where we need to be introducing those different varied food textures and encouraging our children to chew to build up that moral muscular development ready for good speech. Animal sounds and rhyming and repetition, going back to the old stuff. The old stuff is the good stuff. All of that rhyming and repetition is really important. So pulling out all those old, the animals just doing their simple sounds, and old rhymes about animals, and the moo moo and the ba ba, all of those repetitive sounds are so good for building up the basis of speech. Movement is also vital for speech and for fluency. So the more movement we have, the freer our body feels, the more ready for learning it is. So therefore speech becomes more automatic. So never underestimate if we're having a bit of, if we're in a sticky wicket when it comes to speech, as much movement therapy as speech therapy. And as you can see by the slide, how much movement is important. Through movement, our bodies and our brains work together, creating fluency of the mind and the body. When this fluency occurs, children are better equipped to learn and develop. It is important to try to provide a safe yet challenging environment for children to play and move safely. And it is very tempting for parents. We know this because we've been there, of parents of young children, to provide a risk-free environment to keep their children safe. And this is hugely understandable. However, our children need to experience free movement so that they can learn how to move safely. How will our children ever learn how to move safely if their environment is completely risk-free? So it is the job of the parent and the caregiver to provide small risk under their supervision to be able to encourage children to learn how to move safely within their environment. So the great outdoors provides endless movement opportunities. The back to bases of throwing, kicking, climbing, running, jumping, catching, all of that gives children the input they need to be more in tune with their bodies. And the more we do it, the more we practice it, the better we get. And it brings that child to feel fluent. Once they feel fluent, they feel confident, they feel competent, and they feel happy. Happy child is, a child who will learn so much easier. So interact, encourage fun through movement, and you will see a relaxed and engaged child flourish and develop. So if your child has limited movement, so children with additional needs, physical needs, if they have limited movement, try to incorporate any new movement ideas, no matter how small. Any new movement will create new connections. New connections will always be made through new movements. So, that is vital. It's so vital. So the tiniest movement is so important. It's a busy world and children struggle often with concentration and focus. But when we incorporate move and play into their everyday lives, they are learning the skills needed to aid their attention and concentration, which in turn will have a positive impact on their overall skill set. If a child's struggling, if we're struggling at all in any way, behavior, anything, a little bit of movement will not do any harm. It will help greatly. Fluency of movement directly impacts fluency of language and communication skills. So again, as much effort we put into speech therapy and learning and all of that, movement therapy is just as important. So using language whilst moving for the very young child, such as action songs, singing and dancing, and all the various fun games that we can play whilst moving and talking, creates those learning pathways in the brain that are vital for coordinating thought and movement, which we all need to navigate our way through life. If we need to be able to coordinate ourselves, so we need to be able to see a table or see something and coordinate the thought and make the movement with the body to navigate our way around that. Spatial awareness, and that, as we grow, gets more important. So if we can incorporate the language whilst moving by doing, the simple stuff again, head, shoulders, knees and toes, and any of the other, movement, there's probably loads of fabulous new action songs and movement songs out now that it's just so important to help us to be able to navigate our way through our environment as we get up on our feet in particular. So when we learn coordination, we improve our gross and fine motor skills. We improve our balance and our self-awareness, but we also improve and understand our sense of direction better. For children to navigate safely throughout their environment, their sense of direction is hugely important. So loads of play that involves moving of any description. The sense of direction is one of the most important foundations for reading, writing, literacy and numeracy. So if we don't have a sense of direction, we are going to really, really struggle. Similar to, the left to right connection, it's vital that we're able to go left to right. But as we grow a little bit older, we need more of a mature sense of direction to be able to read, to be able to put the letters together to form words, to be able to write and so on. The benefits of movement are endless. Something so simple can provide so much learning and good health. I always say to parents, if in doubt, just stop what we're doing and let's move. Get your child to move, and hopefully it'll come up with something. So next level learning, I'm going to run through these pretty fast, just a wee time check. Okay. So cause and effect, which is learning to connect your actions to your outcomes. Young babies need to understand that they can cause something, that they have an effect on their environment, that they are important. So simple, very simple things like pull toys, pulling a string and making a toy move. That's cause and effect. Pressing a button and something happens. Cause and effect. So all of those simple cause and effect toys or movements are really, really important, because that down the line encourages their understanding of, their impact and what the role that they play in their own lives. So law of gravity and the properties of objects. We need to understand about the law of gravity. We need to be allowed to drop off that high chair. But what do? We go and buy suction toys instead and make sure that we don't get to drop. All the new lovely high chair toys are all suction toys. We are not allowing our children to drop, to look to see where it went, all of that. And it's really important, because not only do they understand the law of gravity, but they get to understand the properties of objects. That some things will roll far away, some things will stay close, some things will bounce. But there's just none of those toys anymore for high chairs. So reverting back to safe toys up in the high chair that can be dropped, so that they can understand the properties of objects and the laws of gravity. Jigsaws and puzzles, so important, as we would start to introduce jigsaws and puzzles in and around 2.5 to 3, after, of course, the pegboards that I mentioned previously. We are looking then at our children being able to put together separate components, separate elements that come together to make one thing. So if it's a 4-piece jigsaw, they're seeing the 4 pieces separately, but they're able to pull them together because of all the other learning that they have established throughout the 2 years prior, that they can pull them together and understand that, oh, okay, this makes one thing. So those jigsaws and puzzles are really important. Directional movement and wrist manipulation toys. Directional movement, is simply really being able to do one thing with one side of the body and something else, another direction with the other side of the body. And it's really just, watching children kind of manipulate difficult movements, like walking and carrying something, getting down out of a chair, all of that. However, isolated movements such as, holding a wee bottle and taking the top off, or, unscrewing a nut and bolt toy, or taking apart something from, your one block from another. That's all really important for their fine and their gross motor skills together. So, there's so many things that will encourage fine motor. There's so many things that will encourage gross motor on its own, but it's hard to find the things that encourage both together, and those things do. So, Finger play and puppets, they can be great for the directional movement and for isolating movement in the fingers as well. Building blocks, being able to just build simple towers of blocks. Most children, particularly young children, will prefer to start with you building the blocks and them knocking them down, and that's absolutely fine, and it's fun and it's learning, and then they will start to build the blocks themselves. So start out, parents do get put off. I build, he knocks them down. That's all he wants to do. That is great. That is a part of learning how to build and connect. So you build them, let them knock them down for a period, and then encourage them. Use hand over hand to build the blocks themselves. Reversible play. I can't highlight how important, hence the asterisks there, how important reversible play is. We all need to have a reversible mind map to be able to navigate life safely. And reversible is just what it says, is to be able to go backwards. So young children are very much forward thinkers. They see a toy, they want it, they're moving forward. They don't think about the return journey in any way. But we, to understand life, we need to be able to think in forward, and we also need to be able to think in reverse. So simple things such as reading a book backwards. So one that we use in LifeStart is Buster Gets Dressed. So it's a very simple book aimed at the under threes, where there's maybe 8, I think, items where Buster gets dressed. So he starts off and he gets dressed with his vest and his pants and his trousers and whatever. And at the end, then he's fully dressed. So we encourage the parents to read it backwards, where he takes off his shoes, his trousers, and it's right back to the beginning. So it's seeing that process in reverse. We need to have a reversible mind map to be able to understand things like subtraction and division later on in life. Not only just subtraction and division, but everything. We need to be able to think backwards. We can't cope with life if we can't retrace our steps, if we can't think about the past. So reversible play is really important. So reading books backwards, playing with Play-Doh. Look at the ball, roll it into a snake, and then, oh, look at the snake, and then back into a ball again. Again, reversible play. Oh, that was a ball. Now it's a snake. Now it's a ball again. So that's reversible. There's so many things and so many games that you can play that are reversible. Filling and emptying, stacking and unstacking, anything that you can undo. As a child gets older, reversible play can be about building up reversible mind maps in their brain, such as just using simple car journeys as a learning tool. We're passing the shop, we're passing the butchers, we're passing the school, we're passing the credit union, we're passing the chapel. So then on the way back, you call it out. We're passing the chapel, we're passing the credit union, we're passing the shop. I can't remember what I've said. So my reversible mind map needs a wee bit of work. So, picking out 3 things and pointing them out, especially on journeys that we do every day. And we always do repeated journeys that are the same place, especially with children, if we're going somewhere. So that in itself is encouraging very early reversible mind maps, and it's vital to be able to navigate your way as an older child and as an adult. So our next steps, things that are really, really important as a child kind of reaches the age of 3, choices and decisions. Every child needs to be able to make their own choices and decisions. And I think a lot of parents will shy away from this because often they feel that they will make choices then and decisions that they're not able to meet. So it's down to, just providing them with choices, that the things that they can choose from. And children find it really difficult to make choices, particularly between things that they like. So, start off easy. Give them a choice between something they like and something that they don't like, and then continue it on. Because when a young child goes to creche, or a young child goes to play school in particular after 3, making choices and decisions is a massive part of that first year. and children become overwhelmed. They're worried about the choice they've made. They get upset because the consequence of the choice that they made was not maybe what they thought. And it can be really, really difficult for children. So understanding choices, making choices, understanding the consequences of those small choices, and so important to be able to navigate socially. Classification and categories to be able to place things into the category and classify them as they are. We as adults, in our brain, we put everything to do with work, everything to do with the kids, everything to do with study, everything to do with the shopping, all into different categories, and that's how we deal with them. As a young child under 3, they do not yet have that skill. Every single iota of information that's coming at them is coming at them at full force, and they, haven't yet learned to classify and categorize all the information. And if we can help them to classify and categorize the information, we will stop information overload, and we will prevent tantrums and meltdowns and challenging behavior. So simple things like, give me all the red blocks, give me all the animals. If you have, maybe going back to the things like flashcards, putting out your flashcards, pick me out all the food, pick me out all the cars, pick me out all the vehicles, pick me out anything. Just bringing it down into simple categories that they understand will help their classification journey and their ability to hold information and deal with it when it is that they need to be able to deal with it, rather than becoming overwhelmed by all the new information that they're being given on a daily basis. Learning to classify and categorize before starting school is really important, because that is a huge stage where so much vital information comes at you so fast, and that can be so stressful for a young child. So, starting your classification and categorizing games prior, in and around 3 is really important. Positioning games. A child needs to know where they are before they'll ever know who they are. And that is again linked to the importance of movement. So, understanding beside, behind, in front of. So play the actual physical game. Trying to, encourage the understanding of those words without doing it physically is very difficult. So stand in front of the box, stand behind the box, stand beside the box, put the doll in the box. All of those positioning games will give your child great confidence as to where they are and where they are in their environment, and to be able to navigate it confidently. Advanced planning, again, very similar to your reversible thought. How can I advance plan something? How can I get from here to there? Playing simple games like stepping stones with your child is lovely. We do the footprint game with our parents and our children, where they puts down the footprints, and the child has to hop or walk along the footprints. That's a game that's played in around 3. But when you reverse that and give the footprints to the young child to do, it's nearly impossible for mum or dad to navigate how they have advanced planned that route, because they're too far apart, or they're, completely on top of each other, or they just, it just doesn't match. So it's having experience of being able to do things like advanced planning, and it's all very simple stuff. It's all stuff that has been around for a long, long time, but it's the stuff that really, really helps your child's holistic development. Action rhymes I've already spoke about, and the ebb and flow of time. The ebb and flow of time, we do not need to be teaching young children, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock. What we do need to be encouraging and understanding of is before, after, later. And, as they get older, then will be tomorrow, today, that is all we need to do, is to start to include it in conversation. So before dinner, after dinner, after your ice cream, things that mean something to them. There's no point, using those words when the actual action isn't important. After EastEnders means nothing to a young child. So after your ice cream, before your ice cream. So let them link it to an enjoyable activity, and they will soon understand the word. Also, when I see the ebb and flow of time written down, I always like to remind parents that it's important that children are not overscheduled and that they can enjoy just being, just playing, just doing, just filling the hours rather than being overscheduled and needing something to fill their time constantly. That really isn't conducive to fluency and relaxation and easy and fun learning. So I think overscheduling children these days has become quite a thing. So it's important that parents do know that it's okay for your child to be bored sometimes. Boredom can be good, and we can learn many things from it. So, across body coordination, earlier on when I spoke about crisscross crawling, that is a cross body coordination. So, that would be your early stage of a cross body coordination. So, what as we move up nearer 3, what we are looking for our children to be able to do is to, cross your left side of your body over to your right, your arms or your legs, and your left over to your right. So right to left, left to right. That is just simply what a cross body coordination is. And to be able to do that without falling over or losing your balance, that means we're on the right road. So when things to encourage that, we need using large pages or easels. A lot of our young children are confined down to small A4 pages to scribble and do their little their drawings. Now, I know the under 3s really all they're doing is making lines and scribbles, and that's absolutely fine. It's hugely important for them to be introduced to that long before 3. But if they have a large paper, if they have a big A3 or newsprint, they can go automatically across their body with with both their hands. The other thing to encourage is go back to the old, the easels that they may have had maybe when they were a wee bit younger, the drawn easels, because when you're up at an easel, you're automatically crossing your body when you're drawing your lines or doing your scribbling or doing your brush strokes. Again, a cross body coordination, anything that you do that crosses the right over the left and the left over the right is creating connections in the brain. The helper hand I have in there because a lot of children I see, they may have established dominance. Dominance I'll talk about next week, but they may have established whether, that they feel more comfortable with their left or their right. At 3, sometimes children will still be using both hands, and that's absolutely fine. But if there seems to be dominance established, it's really important that that helper hand is engaged. So the helper hand is the supporting hand, and it is just as important as the dominant hand. So, have a little look out, know what you see. If your child's helper hand is very dormant, if it's in his pocket, if it's just hanging loose, encourage your child to put that hand up on the page, up on the jigsaw, up onto whatever it is that they're doing, and engage in some way. That in itself helps connections in the brain, and I will talk about that when I talk about dominance next week. So imagination, linked very much to books, but linked very much to our young children's pretend play, and it's something that you see in typical development in the under 3s. So obviously imagination is a rich source of learning. Our right brain develops first, and it's probably fully developed by the time we are 3 to 4 years of age, which to me is just mind-blowing. Our left brain continues until we are 7 or 8 years old, and the rest of our brain continues to develop up until in our 20s. So I think 90% of the brain is developed in the first 5 or 6 years. So when we're working with the under 3s, we need to focus on right brain development. It makes sense. We don't need to be focusing on the left brain stuff. So if we can really create good connections in right brain development of creativity and imagination, we've kind of got that solid base for the left brain to come into play. So, that's why we don't focus on letters and numbers and words and all of that. We focus on movement and play and imagination. At the end of the day, imagination will take you everywhere. The logic bit, the language bit will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you on loads of wonderful experiences. So imagination feeds flexible thinking, and flexible thinking is where the under 3s can think outside the box and show flexibility in their play by using items for different uses. Children need to learn flexibility as life demands flexibility and adaptation to change. A lot of behavior that challenges us comes from our children's inability to adapt to change. So the under threes need time in flexible play. So I think I have a few ideas. Yeah. So first of all, flexible thinking is vital for creativity. You know, if we can be very flexible, we can be very creative. It's so important for empathy because it's beginning to take other people's point of view into consideration. It's vital for trust because if we are very consistent in our parenting and then we need to change and we need to become flexible, your child will trust you that flexible change is good. It helps children adapt to change, and it enhances emotional and social growth. So how can we do that? So flexible thinking toys, make up your own stories, let them roll. Start off, that like a Chinese whisper type thing out loud and let your child like fill in another bit and then you fill a bit. That's, a flexible story. Let your child fill in the gaps in like maybe funny rhymes. Use toys that have multiple uses. That I find is really useful to teach flexible thinking for the under threes. I often use funnels. So, we've had funnels that are funnels and we've had funnels that are trumpets and hats and unicorns, things that leave them to children to use and see what they come up with. And if a child is struggling with their flexible thinking, they'll often copy what you're doing or copy what another child is doing, and then that gives you a little bit of a clue that okay, we need to spend some more time here on flexible thinking toys. So we can pretend to be mum, we can pretend to be dad or granny, and it's listening to how they are when they're in that role. Or they can be a superhero, which they often love to do, or pretend you're an animal. Walk like a snake, walk like a giraffe, roar like a lion. Just get them into more flexible thinking games. Flexible thinking is vital as life demands flexibility. Consistency for the big things and flexibility for the rest. We need consistency in love and food and warmth and all of that, but we do need flexibility for small stuff because life is flexible. And when a child cannot adapt to change or be flexible, then we definitely have difficulties with behavior. So the role of an invested adult. We need to be engaged in their play. Healthy balance is key when we're engaging in their play. We need to know kind of when to get in there and when to step back. We need to play to their strengths and their skills, and their interests will flourish and broaden over time. Watch what they love, engage in that and try to build upon it. Examine your attitudes towards play. How do you respond to play and your engagement levels with each child? Connect with your inner child also. That for me, who loves child development, is one of the biggest things for me. I really have difficulty engaging with my inner child. I have difficulty role playing. So I have done a lot of kind of examining my attitude towards that and how, why is that and what can I give when I'm actually involved in play, and I have got better at it over the years. So examine kind of the attitudes towards play with parents. Examine your own attitudes towards plays, because sometimes if we are not as connected to our inner child, we may feel that it's not necessary. So, sometimes we need to do a little bit on ourselves as practitioners to be able to encourage parents to do the same. So obviously quality is better than quantity. Children will know if you're really interested in them and in their interests. We need longer quality time. If we have 30 minutes quality time, it's better than like all day of non kind of half engaged play. There's no game that will ever replace your playful interaction with any child, and that's so true. Play is the platform for child development in its completion. So just to talk a little about social and emotional growth, I hope you're all with me and you all haven't fallen asleep. We need social and emotional growth for self-confidence and self-awareness. We need it for children to be able to communicate their feelings, to have impulse control and self-regulation. If I had a euro for every impulse control and self-regulation plan that I've done in the past couple of years, I probably wouldn't be here giving this talk. So, it's so important. The roots of social and emotional growth are so important for behavior and for healthy families, because impulse control and self-regulation can tear apart families. It's good, obviously, social and emotional growth. If you have strong social and emotional growth, you're going to be able to manage your conflict and your uncomfortable feelings. You'll be able to show empathy and understanding of the feelings of others. You'll show those general pro-social behaviors, across the board. And you will have that beautiful gratitude and kindness that we see in so many wonderful children. That beautiful connection and kindness that they have towards other children. And the resilience bit. We have seen such a decline in empathy and resilience since COVID, because I suppose young children were not, they didn't have those social emotional connections and social experiences that they would have had if they hadn't have been isolated. So we see a dramatic reduction in resilience and empathy, and that's something that we're working on every day. So going back to the roots of social emotional growth and being able to look at that connection, look at the movement, look at everything, and work out what it is. What can I do for this parent and child to make, not to make it, but to encourage their social and emotional growth to be even stage appropriate. So understanding a child's behavior, especially the behavior that challenges, is so important. Both emotional and social growth need you to understand. It's like, if we can't understand the behavior, we're not going to know how to help it. We also need to do a lot of instruction-based interventions and modeling. If we don't model good social and emotional development, children are not going to learn. So instruction-based stuff, we do have to instruct. I don't love the word instruct, but when we show children, the way, how we present ourselves socially, how we deal with our emotions, it's practice. It's really just practice with them, and model good social and emotional development. When we look at challenging behavior, and I suppose it's a while since I've written this slide, and if I had have read it, I probably would change that, the idea of challenging behavior, to distressed behavior, because I now see it from a completely different perspective. But if a child is challenging, if they're showing behavior challenges, who is it they're challenging? Is it you that they're challenging? Do you feel the behavior as challenging, or does the child see the behavior as challenging? Is it actual challenging behavior? What is it? Is it distressed behavior from the child, and it's behavior that challenges you? Often that is the case. When we change our perspective of behavior, it really changes how we support parents. So I really like to look at behavior and challenges such as that from a more positive lens, because if we look at behavior that is causing some form of concern for parents, often it is referred to as attention-seeking behavior. To me, attention-seeking behavior automatically induces in me a negative response. It's like, how do I stop this behavior? But if I look at it from a standpoint of connection-seeking behavior, I automatically think, right, how can I help this? So the top one is where you're kind of trying to get rid of it, and the other one is where you're trying to provide what the child needs. And I can tell you, when you look at it from the more connected seeking behavior and understanding a child's behavior as distressed behavior, you'll find your clue, and you'll find your solution as such in a much more connected way, in a much more long-term solution. If you are only looking to get rid of a behavior, you might get rid of it initially, but you won't get, it's only a short, very, very short-term solution. When you see children that are punished, it'll stop the behavior in its tracks, possibly initially, but it does not stop the behavior, because the behavior is coming from somewhere else. The source is not the behavior. The behavior is a communication of an unmet need. So if we can look at that behavior as connection-seeking behavior, as practitioners, we automatically want to help it rather than get rid of it. So always from a practitioner standpoint, if we can, look at connection before correction. Connect first, understand the behavior, and then look at what can be done. So emotional childhood development is based upon how children understand, perceive, and respond to people and situations. They're only going to learn that from us. Children often challenge as they have not yet developed the skill set to understand and express their emotions. And often it is as simple as that. It's not other unmet needs. It's simply that they have not learned the skills as yet. And it's up to us as practitioners to equip parents with the skills to be able to teach. So obviously, different, not less. LifeStart has a separate neurodiversity and autism training because yes, we nowadays are coming across obviously children with additional needs. The need is huge, I think, in every county in Ireland, and it's growing continuously. So I just, I didn't want to not reference children with additional needs and families with additional needs, but I'm going to keep it very short because we do have a separate training for that. So all children do not reach their play or developmental milestones at the same time. Every child, as I said before, has their own unique developmental pathway. We need to focus on stage and not age. We need to focus on the ability and not the disability. Focus on the strength, not the weakness. Play is vital for every child, regardless of ability. Play is vital. And it will knit together the difficulties in development. Developmental delay or differences need supported by simply building on their abilities and strengths and not over focusing on their area of delay or challenge. Again, it's the same as looking at behavior. It's not attention seeking behavior, it's connection seeking. So find the ability before the disability and scaffold their learning. There's always wonderful basis for learning in every child, and if we just build small steps upon the foundations, progress will be made. Differences do make the world go round, and all children can learn many things from each other. And I love the inclusive view of all children being together and learning from each other, and that is the way forward. So remember, if we see a child differently, we will see a different child. So just very, very quick recap. So play comes in many different shapes and sizes and is a vital component of development in the early years. Play is child development, simply put. Use your observation skills as a practitioner to understand what you see when your child is playing. How can I help? Do I need to help? What can I do to facilitate more learning through play? What does the environment offer children to grow and develop through play? And what could we add, or indeed what could be removed? Remember the power of your genuine connection through play. 20 minutes quality time is better than hours of disconnected time. Our children can always tell the difference 100%. They will call you out as they get older as well. Early movement patterns are vital early play activity. So tummy time, crawling, sitting up, rolling over, all of those, hugely important early play activity. The floor is your child's first playground. Spending too much time in containers will have a negative effect on their development. Restriction of movement will restrict language and development. the importance of visual stimulation. They remember the concepts of backward chaining and hand over hand approaches to challenging tasks. The importance of movement, dance, nursery rhymes and books, memory development and teach to the reach. The impact of screen time, and particularly on the frontal lobe. The importance of the reversible play idea and building up a reversible mind map. How important it is for our children to be able to make choices and decisions before play school. How important it is to be able to classify and categorize to reduce information overload. How we need to encourage children to think flexible but be consistent, because this parenting arc is so easy. So the importance of connection, understanding and modeling in social and emotional development. Remember connection before correction. Don't shy away from discipline. Discipline means to teach. You know, the word discipline is often not used very much anymore, but it does mean to teach. So connected discipline can offer children the capacity to develop a holistic understanding of the world around them, giving them a safe platform to learn and develop. It's not punitive. Discipline should not be seen as punitive or related to punishment in any way. It should only be, you know, discipline should only be seen through positive eyes and meaning to learn and to teach. If a child is struggling to learn a skill, try to teach it through play. And remember, different abilities, different, not less. So next week, we are going to look at child development from 3 to 5 years. And we're going to take a closer look at the sensory system. We're going to look at cross-body development for the older child and unilateral and bilateral movements. And we're going to talk about establishing dominance, and we're going to look at the physical, emotional, social, sensory, cognitive, and the executive functions of development. And of course, there'll be a wee bit more than just those 5 things. So I am, oh, I ran over time. I was hoping to get
we're doing good.
I was hoping to get them away earlier than that. But
excellent.
That is the end of today's session. If there are any questions, I'm more than willing to take them. But I'd just like to thank you all for listening, and it's been a pleasure being with you here this morning.
Helga, thanks so much. Honestly, absolutely fantastic. I'm sure, and there's feedback coming in the chat box. That's just, it was overwhelmingly good. Do you know, like every point you really had on it so well, easy to listen to as well. Like, so but I there is a couple of questions that have come through. But I'm being a bit selfish because I have one myself, and I think it's something that comes up a lot. So risky play, okay? We know how important it is, okay? But like you're seeing even on social media, something happens to a child, something goes up, the first thing they do is they condemn the parents. What do you mean you let them down the slide? What, you know, and I always feel with parents like that, it's conflicting statements, or, you know, they're afraid nearly to do it because of any backlash if anything goes wrong. So they end up, then they don't let the child go down the slide, or they don't let the child even jump off a path, or, you know, so I suppose it's, you know, how do we as home visitors really encourage that and get that point across that it is so important that they do this in order for them to develop over time, in order for them to have independence, you know, and to take risks when they're older.
Of course. I think with a lot of parents, you know, allowing that level of risk comes natural to them. And then there's other parents that really struggle with it, and they are concerned about safety, and they're also very concerned about being judged. There's so much judgment nowadays that we're nearly scared to say or do anything. I think in those cases, you know, little steps, baby steps, that would be how we were presented with the growing child. We would look at, you know, taking safe risks as such. So risks when you're there, you know, even talking about it from the reversibility concept of, you know, learning how to get down out of a chair backwards, you know, turning your baby around and letting them come down back, you know, backwards. The same as with the stairs, you know, teaching them how to reverse down the stairs, and telling parents the learning behind what it is you're doing. You know, it's not just you're allowing your child to take risks. You're teaching them, you know, you're teaching them how to build up a physical, reversible mind map. You know, they're learning so much from all of these things. But when a parent is scared to take risk, you can't go in, you know, all hell's blazing and wanting them to do, you know, roundabout swings and slides all in the one day. We're just little tiny steps, and once they build up their confidence, and encouraging that they're allowing these risks whilst they're there supervising. It's
Yeah.
not that they're allowing their child off to have risky play on their own. It's very just small, simple steps that you can build on, as long as it's supervised, and just
Yes.
supporting the parent. It's the parent that needs the support.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Helga. I can see Linda's hand is up there. Linda, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Helga, for a brilliant presentation there. It was really enjoyable. But I just have a quick question. How can we help parents recognise and celebrate the small milestones in their child's development and how to build confidence?
Confidence in themselves
Yeah,
as parents.
yeah, and in the child, I suppose,
And in the
as well.
child. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I suppose they go hand to hand, hand in hand, because when we have
Yeah.
a confident parent, we will have a confident child. So really it's the small wins, not
Small
looking
wins.
not looking to celebrate the walking and the rolling and the crawling. The tiny, tiny little things that happen daily, the small stuff, always, commenting them, picking out things that you've seen on a home visit. Just even if it's very simple stuff, how you just communicated, how that was a beautiful reciprocal communication that that was a lovely two-way. I loved the way you looked in his eyes. Look how he looks at you, naming all that for them, the small stuff, and that in itself just builds up their confidence.
Brilliant.
It's really
Thanks.
always the tiny bits make the difference, I feel.
Brilliant.
Helga, the
Thanks so
last
much.
one then has come through. So is there any tools or any frameworks or websites that you would use, for the home visitors to point parents towards, I suppose, for them to gain more knowledge around their child development? I mean, look, the obvious one is probably the HSE one, but is there anything else?
Yeah, mychild.ie, also the parenting platform. There's some wonderful, fabulous webinars, short videos,
Okay.
up on the parenting platform. LifeStart, we have, I think we've maybe about 6 or 7 up at the minute, and they're
So it's on your LifeStart website, is it?
No, the parenting
Oh, no.
platform. The parenting platform is a YouTube channel.
Okay, cool. I'll
Yeah.
find it now and I'll put it
Yeah.
into
Yeah, and it goes, it covers 0 to 18. So
Cool,
you'll
I
have,
have it
you
here.
have, yeah,
That's
you have
brilliant. I
webinar,
can,
yeah.
I'll put it in. Oh, sorry, it's going off
Okay.
on a tangent here. I'm going to put the link into.
Those are the two that we would recommend, as standard, unless you're looking for specialized stuff. But there's loads of fabulous webinars, and they're all free, and they're there. There's podcasts, maybe parents sometimes get 20 minutes out for a walk. They might be able to listen to podcasts. There's stuff on challenging behavior. There's stuff on gender, everything. It's it's from 0 right up to 18. So there's an awful lot of it. School refusal, child development, everything.
Yeah. And Annabella's just come in, and this will be the last one because I want to make sure everyone gets a bit of lunch. Annabella's come in and just asked, is there any websites for child? Is there anything to give parents around the impact of screen time?
Yes, again, mychild.ie is what we use for the impacts of screen time. But the World Health Organization also has specific guidelines for ages on that.
And I know Harvard as well, the child part in Harvard, they have a lot around it, and also positive pieces around interactions through screen time, which is totally different than sticking your child obviously in front of Mickey Mouse, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it can give a balance.
Try and use it in a more productive way. They do say like zero screen time for the under 2s only, unless it's like FaceTime. But
because like we have a lot, obviously, and this would go across the board. There is a lot of families that would engage with families maybe outside Ireland or in positive screen time. So nanny or granddad could be on the screen, just say over in China, and the baby is engaging with the parent and they are facilitating conversations.
Yeah.
And that is a positive screen time as long as it's limited and the family obviously can engage at that time, where we all know the other one is not.
Yeah.
So
No,
you can
absolutely.
get
And I mean,
both.
we're never going to get rid of it. I mean, it's in schools, it's everywhere. We are, you know, but we just, if we, in the very formative years, if we can limit it to the positives, you know, or at least we're trying our best. We're trying our best.
We are. Most definitely. And listen, that's where we wrap up. I would like to thank Helga again. Absolutely brilliant. Helga, there is a lot of people asking for the PowerPoint. So if you wouldn't mind, if that's
Yes,
okay,
of course. Yes.
pass it on to me. And I will send them out after next week's session, which is the same time next Tuesday, 11 to 1. And it's the 0 to 5. And your link that you registered on today will work again for next week's session. Okay, same link.
Perfect.
Will work. And if you just wouldn't mind, when you go off this session, a very short survey of 2 minutes will pop up. Will you please fill it out, because we got funding from the Wheel, and it's their Training Links fund, but we need to give a report back, and in order to give this report back, it's very important that we get the feedback. So if you wouldn't mind, it would literally take 2 minutes. So thanks again, Helga.
You're all
I
very
look
welcome. Thanks a
forward to
million for
seeing everybody
staying
next
with
week. It was fantastic. So same time, same back channel next Tuesday, 11 to 1. Thanks so much.
Take
Enjoy
care.
the rest of your day.